Hi again, this is Bill, the Extreme Cook. Welcome to my video about how I make sauce for my Neapolitan style pizzas. This will be my first video using my very own voice rather than some cheesy soundtrack. I planned to also include my face on camera, but I blew the budget for a makeup person on the new sound equipment. You really want me to get a makeup person like the one Oprah uses. Have you seen what she looks like before makeup? Holy Well, until I can save up for someone like Oprah has, you'll have to use your imagination. So anyway, here's how I make sauce using canned tomatoes. I'll produce a separate video on how I make sauce using good fresh tomatoes. So let's get started. I'll cover 7 things I consider important: the brand, consistency, saltiness, sweetness, acidity, applying the sauce, and additional flavors. There are so many brands of canned tomatoes, it's impossible to tell from the outside how good it is. Some of the worst canned tomatoes I've had have been expensive organic DOP ones. Just examine the ingredients. The peeled tomatoes are packed in puree or juice and often include basil, salt, citric acid, calcium chloride, etc. My current favorite, Carmelina, is just tomatoes and puree. It's relatively inexpensive and it makes for a great sauce with a little help. So now let's start making the sauce as we address the second major area of consistency. That's the thickness of the sauce, the amount of moisture in it. At 900 degrees Fahrenheit, a good portion of the moisture will be driven off, so you need to start with a sauce that is a little on the thin side. It's customary for Neapolitan pies to be somewhat wet at the center, maybe even a little bit soupy. Some people don't like those pies for just this reason. The impression is that the pie is undercooked. I don't mind some wetness in the center after baking, but in no way should the integrity of the crust be compromised. Excessive moisture that results in a soggy crust is unacceptable to me. So after opening the can, I remove each tomato, make a slit in the side with my finger, and allow some of the excess juice to drain back into the can. I used to remove all the seeds and surrounding jelly until I read this from the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry. Quote, the seeds and jelly actually contain 3 times the amount of flavor-enhancing glutamic acid as the flesh, unquote. So now I leave most of them in. The juice that remains in the can is set aside for another use. Now I break up the tomatoes with my hands to the desired consistency, mostly crushed with some larger chunks, as you can see. I now add salt, usually kosher flake salt, a little at a time, tasting after each addition. The goal here is to get it just past the point where I can taste the saltiness. The crust has a little salt and many of the usual toppings have some salt, but the sauce will be the main source and it needs to have enough to enhance the taste of the whole pie. Make sure you add enough. It needs to taste a little salty. At the same time, I grind in a little black pepper. I almost always end up adding some sugar. It tends to enhance the tomato taste, some of which was destroyed during the canning process. Again, I add a little at a time, tasting after each addition, just past the point where I can notice the sweetness. Acidity. This is one of the most important roles the sauce plays in creating a rich, balanced taste for the whole pie. The acidity of the sauce can really bring together the flavor of the crust and the mellow, slightly sweet creaminess of a fresh mozzarella into perfect harmony. Without some acidity from the sauce, the whole pie can taste flat and boring. Now, I'm not talking about making the sauce noticeably sour. I just add enough wine vinegar, a little at a time, until I can taste the salt and sweet and acidity in perfect balance. At this point, it may be necessary to adjust the salt or sugar. I aim for a bold, bright flavor. The dough, cheese, and other toppings will tone it down some. Now we're going to apply the sauce. I keep talking about balance, and it is important for me not to use too much sauce. Each 20-ounce can of whole tomatoes yields about 400 to 500 grams of sauce, enough for at least 4 pies. I use a large spoon to spread the sauce from the center out to the edges. I need to work on my technique, but you get the idea. Here it is important to take precautions to avoid a soggy crust. Get the pie in the oven as soon as you can. There are all kinds of additional things you can add to the sauce. Often you see recipes with garlic, oregano, basil, anchovies, cheese, etc., etc. I do often like these flavors on the pie, but I keep them out of the sauce, preferring not to mess with its clean, bright flavor. I'll add them separately to toppings when so inclined. So here's a summary. Find a brand of whole canned tomatoes you like. Crush the tomatoes by hand, leaving in most of the seeds and jelly. Add enough salt, sugar, and wine vinegar. Taste adjust until you get the right balance, bold and bright, since the crust and cheese will tone it down. Don't apply too much sauce. Less is more. Get the pie in the oven right away. I hope you found this brief video of value. If so, be sure to visit my blog, extremecooking.blog.com.